Well, possible.
Where we found your mum?
Okay, so upstairs there were about 5 wardrobes.
Yep.
It's behind the bed at the back next to the sink. That's the second one. I slipped a pile of those into his drink. There were about 2 or 3 drinks that I brought downstairs. And yeah, they were basically, he didn't drink all of them. He only drank probably about half of 2. But yeah, when I went in the morning, this was before my mother.
Oliver, today I present another case. Virginia Mccullough was born on an unspecified date in 1988 in the English county of Sussex, UK. Little is known about her childhood and family life, except that she was the youngest of 5 daughters born to John and Lois Mong. Those who knew Virginia describe her as a lonely girl with difficulty relating to others and somewhat eccentric. She had a troubled adolescence marked by a long history of running away from home. According to later testimonies from her sisters, Virginia exhibited a compulsive tendency to lie and deceive others since childhood, although she was never involved in any serious situations. While no specific details about her academic training are available, it is known that she always showed an interest in the arts, and her last known job was as a waitress in 2017. As the daughters grew up, each one left home to start their own families, leaving the Mccullough couple alone in the home they had occupied for over 2 decades in a suburban village located in the Chichester district of Sussex. According to accounts, Virginia was the only one of her sisters who did not marry or have children. Therefore, it came as no surprise when, upon John and Lois's retirement and subsequent illness, their youngest daughter moved back in to care for them, keep them company, and manage their finances. No one could have foreseen that this common arrangement, typical of families with elderly members striving to allow them to remain in their homes surrounded by loved ones, would morph into a horror story that shocked the British public. Virginia's sisters noted that John and Lois were not particularly affectionate, adhering to the customs and traditions of bygone times. They asserted, however, that they were loving and warm parents and grandparents. Born on January 8, 1949, John was described as a tireless worker, a good father, and an excellent husband. For many years, he worked as a university professor of business studies and was an avid reader, embodying a jovial and fun-loving spirit who never lacked for hobbies in his spare time. Although John particularly enjoyed playing billiards and golf, he also loved sharing jokes and humor with his daughters, who laughed heartily at his every witticism. Lois, who was reportedly born on October 15, 1948, was somewhat more reserved and had a long career in education. Those close to her described her as a loving, kind, and attentive woman. Passionate about history, she held a deep interest in the British royal family, fueled by her love of correspondence. She maintained friendships with many people both in the United Kingdom and abroad, exchanging letters with several of them for decades. One common bond the Mcculloughs shared was their love for the sea. According to relatives, they enjoyed traveling together to coastal destinations where they relished peaceful walks along the shore and various marine attractions. In fact, they had informed their relatives, neighbors, and friends that after retiring, they planned to move to the town of Clacton-on-Sea by 2019. 71-year-old Lois and 70-year-old John were pleased to have Virginia taking care of household chores, grocery shopping, and bill payments. Their older daughters felt relieved knowing their parents were in good hands, and despite Virginia's tendency to lie and embellish stories, they had no reason to believe she would neglect or harm them, at least not until an unexplained absence attributed to the pandemic. Although somewhat mysterious and possessing a dark sense of humor, neighbors considered Virginia to be a pleasant woman. When they encountered the Mcculloughs, they would greet them kindly or wave at them, and they noted that the exterior of the house appeared clean and well kept. However, some later testified that at night, the 2-story building took on a gloomy atmosphere. The curtains were always drawn, and they observed shadows of people moving quickly inside. This raised their suspicions, especially since both Lois and John were limited in their mobility due to their advanced age and various health issues. Reports indicated that John suffered from autism spectrum disorder and a medical history that included hypertension, high cholesterol, glaucoma, and type 2 diabetes, conditions requiring him to take regular medication and attend periodic follow-up appointments with his primary care physician. Lois, on the other hand, had a history of anxiety, was agoraphobic, and appeared to have obsessive-compulsive disorder. The Bollos were also concerned about Virginia's health. She claimed to have several benign cysts that required treatment. According to court records, during her time living with her parents, Virginia told her doctor that she was pregnant but had experienced a spontaneous miscarriage. However, some neighbors testified that Virginia once pretended to be pregnant by placing fabric under her clothing to create the illusion of a larger belly. Virginia informed her parents that she had a job and was studying to become a professional artist, claiming this career would provide an income that would benefit the entire family. Her sisters, who lived in different cities, were reassured by the regular updates from their parents, who frequently wrote to them and sent cards for special occasions like birthdays and Christmas. However, by mid-June 2019, the neighbors noticed that John and Lois had stopped appearing in public. When they inquired about their parents, Virginia's responses raised further concerns. When neighbors inquired about John and Lois, Virginia would inform them that her parents were either unwell or on vacation. Alan Thompson, a local resident who rented a television set to the Mcculloughs, later recounted receiving a call from their daughter to notify him about the cancellation of the rental agreement. Alan dispatched his staff to retrieve the television, but they were informed that entry into the property was not permitted and that the TV was prepared for collection. Although this struck him as odd, he never suspected that anything sinister could be happening inside the house. As the COVID-19 pandemic necessitated prolonged confinement, community interactions dwindled and communication shifted to virtual platforms. Consequently, no one grew particularly concerned about Lois and John not being seen outside, especially given their advanced age and pre-existing health conditions, which placed them in a vulnerable population that needed to avoid contracting the virus. The only person maintaining physical contact with them was Virginia, whom everyone perceived as a dutiful daughter. However, concern mounted when a patrol car arrived at the Mccullough's home on August 18, 2023, responding to a call from Virginia reporting that she had been assaulted in the backyard. An officer entered the residence and interviewed Virginia in the living room, but after a brief investigation, the case was closed. The police found no connection to Lois and John, who, according to various accounts Virginia provided to those who inquired, were either on a beach trip, recuperating from a health issue, or attending a medical appointment. A store employee, who regularly saw the couple, mentioned that they had moved to a seaside home, while others were told they were vacationing. However, the couple's regular doctor grew increasingly alarmed as weeks passed without any contact. Virginia frequently cancelled their appointments, offering various excuses, but he was particularly concerned about John's health as he required consistent medication. On September 1, 2023, the doctor reached out to the Essex County Council's Protection Department to express his concerns regarding the couple's absence from scheduled appointments. This complaint was subsequently referred to the Essex Police, who initially treated the case as one of missing persons. On September 13th, officers met with Virginia, who assured them that her parents were traveling and would return in October. When they requested to speak with John and Lois directly, she claimed they had not taken their phones with them due to their lack of technological savvy. Nevertheless, the officers began to harbor suspicions regarding the couple's absence and Virginia's explanations. On September 15th, the police returned to the residence armed with a search warrant, and what they discovered within the home shocked the once quiet community. In a shocking revelation, the police discovered dark secrets concealed within the Mccullough home, hidden in a makeshift mausoleum and a closet. The body cameras of the officers executing the search warrant captured the moment they forced open the back door. One officer aimed a taser at Virginia as he walked down the hallway, eventually placing her in handcuffs and informing her that she was under arrest for John's murder. When questioned about her parents, the 35-year-old woman's response left everyone astounded. With a chilling calmness, Virginia pointed toward a corner near the stairs, indicating the location of a lifeless body. She then requested an officer to show them what they would find in the stairwell. Upstairs, they discovered Lois's remains concealed in a closet. Virginia recounted in detail how she had crushed pills and mixed them into her parents' drinks. By around 6 a.m. the following morning, she realized that John was gone, as evidenced by the recording we played at the beginning of this video. She explained that since Lois rarely drank alcohol, she consumed a smaller dose and remained awake, fearful that her mother would uncover her actions. Virginia felt compelled to end her mother's life as well, but lacked a concrete plan. Instead, she fetched a hammer, a sharp object, and gardening gloves, taking them to her room. She admitted to entering and exiting her mother's room with the hammer at least 3 times, while Lois lay on her bed, listening to music on the radio. After her 3rd attempt, Virginia knew that if she continued, the situation would escalate. In that moment, Lois turned to her and asked what she was doing, causing Virginia to hesitate for a few seconds before striking her again. Realizing that the hammer would not suffice and not wanting her mother to suffer, Virginia left the room, removed one of her gloves, and returned with the sharp object. She then attacked her mother with the knife multiple times until Lois ceased moving. Virginia stated that she subsequently took her mother's hand, kissed it, and exited the room. On the morning of June 18th, Virginia drove to the city of Chenford, where she purchased sleeping bags and gloves, using John's credit card for payment. Later that afternoon, she visited her doctor's office to have a cut on her finger treated. After treating a cut on her finger that wouldn't stop bleeding, Virginia explained to the doctor that she had injured herself while cutting vegetables. Once treated, she returned home and began the macabre task of concealing her parents' bodies. The most disturbing aspect of the case is that the events Virginia described occurred between July 17 and 18, 2019, meaning she lived in the house alongside the remains of her parents for over 4 years. According to records, 2 days later, on June 20th, Virginia ordered 40 concrete blocks, cement, and sand. A month later, she made another order, which included a stepladder, a roll of paper, and duct tape. Following her confession, Virginia was taken to the police station, where she would remain in custody while the investigation unfolded. The house was cordoned off as a crime scene, and a forensic team began the grim work of recovering the bodies. While in a holding cell, Virginia explained to officers where to locate the bodies and the weapons used in the fatal attacks. She indicated that one knife was hidden beneath a brown carpet against the wall opposite 2 long white shelves. The details she provided were chilling. On the first floor, John's body was concealed in a makeshift mausoleum constructed from masonry blocks and wooden panels, sealed with white putty. The structure resembled a bed, adorned with several blankets and photographs, and contained more than 10 layers of plastic and other materials covering his remains, which were wrapped in a sleeping bag. Lois was found in a double closet on the 2nd floor, also wrapped in plastic and a sleeping bag. Both she and her husband were in an advanced state of decomposition. The remains were taken to the local morgue, where identification relied on dental records. Preliminary results from forensic analysis published in October revealed that Lois Malloch from stab wounds to the neck and chest. The cause of John Malloch's death was initially indeterminate, pending further investigation. Additionally, during the search of the property, police uncovered documents revealing Virginia's attempts to obscure a financial disaster of her own making. It was discovered that, in addition to exploiting the goodwill of John and Lois, who allowed her to live in their home rent-free, Virginia had squandered her own funds and accumulated substantial debts on her parents' credit cards. Investigators recovered forged letters and bank documents that Virginia used to obtain loans in her parents' names. She justified delays in repayments, which had been entrusted to her by her parents, by claiming that she had lost the funds in credit card scams. Through forensic analysis of her writings, it was established that prior to the crime, Virginia had led her parents to believe she held a stable job, asserting that her employers had failed to pay her due to a cyber attack on the company. Authorities also uncovered 145 telephone numbers associated with Virginia, predominantly used between 2022 and 2023, as well as 10 lines registered to Lois and 16 lines registered to John. Notably, one phone had undergone at least 78 SIM card swaps in less than a year. These numerous numbers were presumably employed by Virginia to maintain the illusion of normalcy, particularly concerning her sister's perceptions of her parents' whereabouts. In fact, during the investigation, it was discovered that on June 18, 2019, shortly after her parents' deaths, Virginia sent a message to one of her sisters impersonating Lois, claiming they were on a trip and would be staying in Walton for a week. Additionally, Virginia occasionally mimicked Lois's voice to communicate with her sisters and her parents' office staff, cancelling appointments and assuring them that she and John were in good health. Following the deaths of her parents, it was determined that Virginia continued to collect their pensions and, through this, along with loans obtained via credit cards and the sale of property assets, she profited approximately Ps $14,969, equivalent to nearly $15,000 at current exchange rates. However, between 2019 and 2023, Virginia accumulated debts exceeding PS $21,000 on online gambling sites, contributing to a total insolvency amount of over PS $60,000, or nearly $80,000. After her arrest on September 19, 2023, Virginia appeared via video conference from Peter Baruch Prison at Basildon Crown Court, where the judge ordered her remand in custody until further notice. Her plea hearing was set for December 1, 2023, at Chenford Crown Court, where she faced 2 counts of murder. During this session, her defense did not enter a plea, citing the need for more time to prepare expert witness reports. On February 9, 2024, Virginia appeared again in court remotely and was remanded in custody until the next hearing on March 1, 2024. It was announced that her trial would commence on October 7, 2024. However, during a session held on July 4, 2024, Virginia Mccullough pleaded guilty to both murder charges, facing a possible life sentence. That same day, a sentencing hearing was scheduled to begin on July 10. The sentencing hearing was scheduled to begin on October 10, 2024, but ultimately took place 1 day later, on October 11. During the hearing, the Crown representative detailed how Virginia had killed John with a lethal combination of prescription drugs diluted in alcoholic beverages, while Lewis was fatally assaulted with a hammer. The representative also highlighted that Virginia had been involved in an intricate scheme of fraud and deceit long before the murders, leaving the entire family in debt to her parents. The prosecutor explained how Virginia misused her parents' credit cards, opened additional accounts in their names, and described in detail her methods for disposing of their bodies. Remarkably, she lived with their remains for over 4 years, continuously lying to others about their whereabouts. One of the detectives assigned to the case stated that Virginia's heinous actions had a profound emotional impact on the family. He emphasized that the investigation was complex, with officers confronting a challenging scene that required several days to conduct the necessary forensic inquiries to piece together the events. According to Virginia's admission of facts, she had been planning the crime since March 2019. Her family described her as a compulsive liar who frequently complained of complex medical issues, including severe headaches. The prosecutor noted that, prior to her parents' deaths, Virginia would send them out for fast food, claiming she was unable to do so. However, the prosecution argued there was no evidence to support the persistence of any of these alleged health problems during her detention. The pandemic also played to Virginia's advantage, as it allowed her to justify her parents' prolonged absence, leading others to believe they were still alive. Over the 4 years, Virginia made approximately 185 calls to her parents' doctor's office, occasionally impersonating her parents when speaking with staff. She accused her parents of being abusive, particularly Lois, whom she described as a violent woman. These allegations were categorically denied in a joint statement issued by the Mcculloughs, who condemned Virginia's claims as lies and a vile misrepresentation of their family. In the document read after the ruling, they reflected on Lois and John's lives, their careers, their love for their children and grandchildren, and the cherished memories they created during their time together. During the hearing, videos from the body cameras of the officers involved in the raid were played, further illustrating the gravity of the case. The officers who raided the family home in September 2023 were struck by the coldness with which Virginia revealed her father's location, pointing with her hand to the improvised grave in the living room as she confessed to murdering him. When asked about her mother, she stated that Lois was upstairs in the closet, which she claimed she had not opened due to uncertainty about her mother's condition. Despite her earlier detachment, Virginia displayed emotion as she listened to the prosecutor recount the details of her mother's death and the reasons that led her to end the lives of those who had given her life. The prosecutor presented financial evidence indicating that Virginia had long exploited her parents while they were alive, ensuring that she continued to benefit from their pensions even after their murders. It was noted that, in the latter part of her parents' lives, Virginia had feigned employment and income while secretly stealing from them and attempting to secure loans without their knowledge. A psychiatrist who evaluated Virginia testified that her lack of emotional empathy and the brutal nature of the attacks suggested a deficient affective experience typical of psychopathic personalities. The expert acknowledged that, while Virginia displayed traits of autism spectrum disorder, she had not suffered substantial impairment in her ability to understand her actions, form rational judgments, or exercise self-control. In essence, Virginia was aware that her actions were wrong. During her evaluation, Virginia confided that she had always desired her parents' deaths to be non-violent, though she had kept a hammer as a backup weapon. She admitted to having adulterated John's drinks prior to the crime, using him as a test subject. The psychiatrist reported that following the murders, Virginia experienced depression and paranoia, leading her to self-harm on multiple occasions while living in the house with her parents' bodies. She also claimed to regularly dream of Lois and John in their final moments. In her closing statements, the prosecution emphasized that the crimes were driven by financial gain and that Virginia had taken deliberate and extreme measures to conceal the bodies. They reiterated that her actions were motivated by profit. In contrast, the defense argued against the proposed sentence, citing mitigating factors, such as Virginia's prompt guilty plea during her arrest at home and her subsequent admission of guilt. The defense highlighted that Virginia had provided the officers with detailed explanations of her actions, including how and when they occurred. They contended that this, along with expert testimony regarding her state of mind and expressions of remorse, warranted a more lenient sentence than life imprisonment. They also reminded the court that Virginia was the sole caregiver for her parents and lacked any external support, suggesting that the financial benefits she received after their deaths were perceived as compensation for managing the household. Additionally, the defense noted that Virginia never attempted to flee and had acknowledged the pain she caused her sisters, asserting from the outset that she deserved punishment for her actions. According to her attorney, she was not attempting to use her autism as a defense but expressed that her condition played a role in her decision-making process, which might partially explain her heinous acts. Before issuing the sentence, the judge addressed Virginia directly, stating that she had stolen from and lied to her family for years. The judge pointed out that Virginia had obtained credit without her parents' consent to maximize the amount she could take from them, which she subsequently spent on online gambling and other purchases. The judge detailed how Virginia had inflicted 8 knife wounds on her mother, Lois, and noted that the injuries to her mother's arms indicated defensive actions, leaving no doubt that, in her final moments, Lois was aware that her own daughter was fatally attacking her. In light of the premeditated nature of the domestic abuse, the judge underscored that Virginia had meticulously devised her plan over several months, accumulating a significant quantity of prescription drugs prescribed to her parents to execute her perverse intentions. The magistrate stated that once the crime was committed, the defendant made extensive efforts to conceal the bodies, managing to convince everyone for 4 years that her parents were still alive. However, he noted that in determining the sentence, he had to consider certain mitigating factors. Among these were psychiatric evaluations indicating that Virginia exhibited symptoms of personality disorders and signs of autism, as well as evidence that she had developed depression and psychosis following the events. The judge acknowledged that Virginia's admissions, her cooperation with the police, and the remorse she had demonstrated since the crime were significant factors in assessing her punishment. Consequently, Virginia Mccullough, now 36 years old, was sentenced to life imprisonment, with a minimum term of 30 years minus the year she spent in pretrial detention. This means she will be eligible for parole in 2059, when she will be 71 years old, the same age her parents were when she took their lives and concealed their bodies in her home. The verdict was announced after police stated that the case horrified even the most experienced homicide detectives and shocked the community just as much. Investigating officers described Virginia as a cunning manipulator who murdered her parents in cold blood, showing no consideration for the suffering her actions would inflict on her loved ones. The prosecution welcomed the conviction, characterizing the case as profoundly disturbing, and remarked that the crime had caused significant devastation to the Mccullough family. They expressed hope that with the verdict, the family could begin to heal the deep wounds left by the loss of Lois and John. The daughters of Lois and John issued a statement expressing their gratitude to the police, particularly to the investigative team that worked diligently to achieve justice. They described their parents as loving individuals and affirmed that they would always hold their memories close to their hearts. Finally, they requested privacy to continue grieving in silence for their loss. The horrific crimes committed by Virginia Mccullough have left wounds that are difficult to heal, not only within her family but also in the quiet community where she lived. This community continues to grapple with the unsettling reality of how a daughter could take the lives of her own parents and coexist with their corpses for 4 years. Residents struggle to comprehend the disturbing calmness displayed by Virginia when she confessed, pointing out the location of the remains, and where she had concealed the murder weapon's details recorded in police videos that have since gone viral on social media. This chilling case has ignited a debate in the United Kingdom regarding complex issues such as parricide, mental health challenges, and the care of the elderly. Questions arise as to why no family members visited the house and why it was a third party, the Mccullough family doctor, who alerted the authorities about their disappearance instead of a relative or neighbor. Now that you are aware of the details of this disturbing story, what are your thoughts on Virginia Mccullough's demeanor during her arrest? Do you agree with the sentence imposed on her, or do you believe she should not have been granted parole? We would love to hear your opinions in the comments. Well, dear audience, here is another case for your consideration. Your feedback is incredibly important to us, so please share your thoughts with the utmost respect for both the victims and your fellow viewers. Before you go, remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to share this video if you think someone you know might be interested. Until next time, goodbye from this criminal investigation.